Hi, Rabbi Katz, Cantor, Chesler. Why is this Seder different than all other Seders? I think we all know that this year we feel confined, almost enslaved by what's going on around us. And sadly, many families are not able to come together. So what we wanted to do was to help you conduct a Seder, especially if you're not familiar with all the intricacies and all the prayers. So we're going to go through the main points of fulfilling the mitzvah of telling the story of Yitziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt. We begin with Kiddush, just like on a Friday night. We begin the holiday over a cup of wine, which is a symbol of sweetness and joy. And the prayer not only thanks God for the wine, more significantly, thanks God for having freed us from slavery.
If you have this Haggadah, it's on page 5, right in the middle. Page 5, right in the middle. Savri, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol am, ורוממנו מכל לשון, וקידשנו במצוותיו. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה, מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון. את יום חג המצות הזה, זמן חירותנו, מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ומועדי קודשך, בשמחה ובששון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, Mikadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim.
Amen.
First night on page 7. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Amen. So, before Jews eat, traditionally we always wash our hands. And this time we're about to do karpas, the celery dipped in salt water, so we should wash. Usually when we wash, we say a blessing, but in this case there's no blessing. It's almost a clue to us. It's a way of saying, you know what, this is not going to be a real meal. We are like slaves. We're not going to be able to sit down and relax and enjoy. This meal is going to be just a partial one. So when we wash, we first do over the right hand and the left hand, and we repeat that twice. And it's not a bad idea these days to wash our hands as often as we are able to. The next step of the Seder is called karpas, and we take some green. Many families it's celery, it could be parsley, and we dip it into salt water. This is the first of the two dippings. The green of the parsley or celery symbolizes spring, which is a good thing. The salt water symbolizes tears, which is a bad thing, a sad thing. And this is the first of the two dippings that we talk about in the 4 questions. So the blessing for the vegetable is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'adama. This serves, the celery or the parsley serves either as a kind of hors d'oeuvre. We're not going to be eating the main meal for a little bit. There's a lot of Haggadah to get through. Maybe this is to carry us through, but there's another possible meaning. What we're also saying is that when we were slaves, sometimes it wasn't a full meal. It was the weeds or the grass or what you could pull out of the earth while you were working, and that's all that the people had to eat. The next step of the Seder is called Yachatz, which means the dividing. And what we do is we take one of the matzahs, usually we have three, we take one and we break it in half and we hide it. In some families, this is going to be hidden by the leader. In other families, it's going to be stolen and hidden by the children. Very different customs. And we take half of the matzah and we put it away. Why do we do that? Well, not only because it's a great game that kids love very much, more significantly, it reminds us that when we were slaves, we never knew when the next meal might be. And so, as in the concentration camps, when people had food, sometimes they ate a little bit and they put away a little bit, never knowing whether they needed to feed their children or whether they would even have the next meal. We now come to a section of the Haggadah called Ha-Lachma Anya. This is actually in Aramaic, the language that Jews spoke back 2,000 years ago. And what we do is we hold up a piece of matzah and we say, this is poor people's bread. This is what we had to eat in Egypt. And then we say one of the most exquisite lines in the Haggadah, Kol dichvin yete v'yechol. Anyone who is needy, you're invited to come and be with us. The incredible thing is, despite our poverty, this is the bread of poor people, the bread of affliction, nevertheless, we still think about others and still invite them. We now come to one of the highlights, the center for children certainly, is the Manishtana, the 4 questions. And the first one is after the introductory line, Manishtana, which the Cantor is now going to sing.
Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot.
Here's one of the interesting things about the 4 questions. We don't really give answers to them. We just ask. And it's left for us to really take these questions seriously. Question number 1, we would prefer to have a warm, nice challah on when we sit together. Why do we have to eat this matzah? Nobody really loves it. That's the first question.
Shebechol halelot anu ochlin chametz umatzah, chametz umatzah, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah.
Listen, if we have to choose food that we're going to eat, we're going to probably choose things that are sweet and that are savory, things that taste good. Who would go out of their way to pick something that's bitter and that makes you choke and brings tears to your eyes? So the second question is, why do we have all this maror, the bitter herb, on Passover?
Shebechol halelot anu ochlin shehar yerakot, shehar yerakot, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh, maror, maror, halayla hazeh, halayla hazeh, maror, maror.
Generally, in American meals and in Jewish meals, there wasn't dipping. But on Passover, there were 2 dippings. First dipping was we take the celery or the parsley, dip it in salt water. The second of the dippings is we will eventually take the maror and we will dip it in charoset. Interesting, because here we're taking something good and putting it into something bad. Here we're taking something bad and putting it into something good that will sweeten it. And some people say this reminds us of the story of Passover. When Joseph came down, there was a famine, and ultimately he fed the world. But that led to slavery. That's the first dipping. The second dipping is from slaves we were freed. That's the second dipping, and that is the positive ending to our story. Third question.
שבכל הלילות אין אנו מטבילין אפילו פעם אחת, אפילו פעם אחת. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, שתפר עמים. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, שתפר עמים.
The fourth question is about reclining. That one doesn't make much sense to us either. We don't generally recline, but we have to remember when the rabbis in the 1st and 2nd century created the Seder, they were living in the Roman world, and Roman free people didn't sit at a table and share. What they sat on, they lay down on couches, and with their right, they leaned with their left elbow, with their right hand, they ate off of a small table that was placed in front of them. That was a symbol of being free. And so what do? During parts of the Seder, those of us who have tables and chairs, we either lean a little bit to the left. Some people put a pillow behind them in order to make it clear that we are free people and in luxury now. Fourth question.
שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבין ובין מסובין, בין יושבין ובין מסובין. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובין. הלילה הזה, הלילה הזה, כולנו מסובין.
The general answer to these questions, why do we do all these strange things on Passover? Because we were slaves and now we are free. Avadim hayinu.
עבדים היינו, היינו, אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין. עבדים היינו, אתה בני חורין, בני חורין. אתה בני חורין, בני חורין.
Then we move on to talk about the 4 sons or the 4 children. Truth of the matter is, there are no 4 children. The rabbis did something very clever. They found in reading the Torah that there were 4 places that spoke about teaching your children about our history and about the Exodus and about being freed. And what the rabbis found is that there were 4 different phrases. And they said, you know, these sound like phrases that might have been asked by different kinds of children. So first, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 20, it's the question there is, one day your child will ask, what are the rules and the laws and the regulations that God commanded us? And the rabbi said, that sounds like a very smart, intelligent child, hence the Hacham, the smart kid. Then there's another question found in Exodus chapter 12, verse 26, where it says, one day your child will say to you, Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem. What is all this stuff that you are doing? The rabbi said, that's a pretty snarky answer, a pretty snarky kind of question. That must be the wicked, the rebellious child. Then in Exodus chapter 13, verse 14, we say, one day your child will say, Mazod, what is this? The rabbi said, sounds like just a very simple child. Right? And then finally, there's a fourth passage, Exodus chapter 13, verse 8, where it says, there is no question, and it says, you should tell your children. So that becomes the one who does not know how to ask. Here's the interesting thing. Is the story of the 4 children trying to tell us, you know what, in every family, there's going to be the nerd, there's going to be the jock, there's going to be the rebellious kid. Is that what they're saying? Or is it possible, here's a fascinating idea, the 4 children are not really 4 different children, but they're each of us. Within each of us, we have times and aspects of our personality in which we are brilliant. Sometimes we are angry and mean. There are times when we're simple. And there are times when we just don't even know what's going on around us. We continue now with a statement about this has been the story of the Jewish people in our past, and it continues to this day. Who would have thought that in the last couple of years we would have seen the rise of anti-Semitism, in which we thought for so long that's something in our history, nothing we need to worry about anymore. And yet, here it is, right in our own country, be it in Pittsburgh or Poway or in Jersey City or in Muncie or in Brooklyn. We all need to look over our shoulders once again. And we're reminded, V'hi she'amda, that despite what our enemies try to do, God will always be there to protect us.
והיא שעמדה, והיא שעמדה, לעבורתנו ולנו. והיא שעמדה, והיא שעמדה, לעבורתנו ולנו. שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, אלא שבכל דור ודור עומדים עלינו לכלותנו, והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מידם.
The essence of the Haggadah story is taken from 4 verses in the book of Deuteronomy. And there we read the following, that our ancestors were wandering Arameans. In other words, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob ultimately came from Aram, which would be today Iraq, and they came to the land of Israel. There was a famine in the land of Israel. They had to go down to Egypt to find food. Lo and behold, Joseph, who had preceded the family by 20 years, was second in command to Pharaoh and had interpreted Pharaoh's dreams and had stored food so that all the world had what to eat. For many years, the Jews living in Egypt were protected. Everything was wonderful. But suddenly, v'areo otanu hamitzrim v'ya'anunu. What happened? The new Pharaoh arose, forgot what Joseph had done for the Egyptians. The Israelites were enslaved. V'yitnu aleinu avodah kasha. They forced us to do hard labor. V'nitzak el Adonai Elohei avotenu. We cried out to God. V'yishma Adonai et kolenu. God heard us. V'yaret anyenu. He saw our suffering. V'yet amalenu v'yet lachatzenu. And the persecution. V'yotzienu Adonai mimitzrayim. God took us out of Egypt. Egypt. Biyad chazaka, with a strong arm. Mizra netuya, b'mora gadol uve'otot uve'moftim. And this was accomplished by great miracles. So, next thing we do is we take our cups of wine, we place a finger in the cup, and we take out 10 drops from the cup of wine and place it on our plates. Why do we do that? Two opposite answers. One says it's to show that all 10 plagues happened, it was done by the finger of God. In other words, it wasn't a natural catastrophe or calamity that happened coincidentally to happen at that moment. God did this. It was done by the hand of God, looking out for us, hurting and punishing our enemies. But there's another explanation, an opposite one. And it says, even though we were freed, and even though the Egyptians did us bad, nevertheless, our cup of joy cannot be complete when we know that other people had to suffer and die in order for us to become free. Two very different ways that Jews look at the world. So we go through the 10 plagues and we call them out. Dam, blood. Tzfardea, frogs. Kinim, lice. Arov, wild animals running wild. Dever, plague, pestilence, disease. Shechin, we see boils on the body. Barad, hail coming from heaven. Arbe, locusts. Choshech, darkness. And finally, Makat Bechorot, the striking down of all the firstborn. So after we have spoken about the things that were bad things that were done to our enemies, we also recount all the wonderful things that God did for us. The bad things are 10 in number. The good things in the song Dayenu are 15 in number. So we sing two of the verses of Dayenu.
Ilu hotzi aru mi Mitzrayim, hotzi aru mi Mitzrayim, dayenu, 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 dayenu. Ilu natan lanu, et Shabbat natan lanu, et Shabbat dayenu, 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 dayenu.
Rabbi Gamliel was the leader of the Jewish people in the land of Israel in the 2nd century, and he said the following: Kol shelo amar shlosha dvarim elu b'Pesach. If you haven't talked about or mentioned 3 things on the Seder plate, lo yatsa yedei chovato. You haven't done the task. Eluheim, and these are the 3 things. The first one is Pesach. So on the Seder plate, we have a shank bone, a zro'ah, part of the originally it was part of the lamb that was sacrificed, blood put on the doorposts, and the families ate that as their last meal in Egypt. But later on, when we no longer brought a sacrifice of sheep to the temple on Passover, this became part of the meal to remind us of that. So that's why we have that there. Second thing is matzah. What's the point of matzah? Well, the secret to matzah is you take flour and water. From the time that the flour hits the water, you have 18 minutes to mix it into dough, to shape it, and to put it into the oven and pull it out. Anything longer than 18 minutes, and by itself, you're going to have rising, basically chametz. And so therefore, what we know is that matzah is quick bread. It was made by people who had to leave Egypt perhaps in the next half hour or hour. And they didn't have time to sit around and wait for challah, for something that would be more delicious. So that's the reason we eat matzah. It was quick bread on the last night in slavery. And finally, the moror, the horseradish. Most Ashkenazic Jews today use red horseradish, but perhaps even more traditional was to use romaine lettuce or endives. And again, those were probably things that the slaves were able to find in the field. Didn't taste very good, but that was the best that they could do under terrible circumstances. And so eating a lot of horseradish and making our throats burn and our eyes water, for a moment we are as if back in slavery, understanding what it was all about. We next move on and we tell the story not through symbols, not through the text, but through a song, actually a psalm from Hallel, B'tzeit Yisrael. When our people left Egypt, this is what God did for us.
B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'amlois, Hayta Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael mamshalotav, Hayam Ra'ah v'hayanos, Hayarden Yisov le'achor, Heharim rakedu che'elim, Gevaot kivnei tzon, Malecha hayam,
Malecha hayam,
Kitanus,
Kitanus,
Hayarden,
Hayarden,
Tisov le'achor,
Tisov le'achor,
Heharim,
Heharim,
Tirkedu che'elim,
Tirkedu che'elim,
Gevaot
Gevaot,
kivnei tzon,
Kivnei tzon,
Milifnei Adon,
Milifnei Adon,
Chuli aretz,
Uli aretz,
Milifnei
Milifnei
Eloah Yaakov,
Yaakov,
Hahofchi Hatzur,
Ahofchi Hatzor,
Agam Mayim,
Agam Mayim,
Halamish,
Halamish,
Lemaino Mayim.
Lemaino Mayim. We now lift up the cup. We're ready for the second cup of the 4 cups. And there's a blessing that's recited. We thank God for having redeemed us from slavery. We ask God to continue to redeem us from all of our enemies and all of our troubles.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen. We drink the second cup. We now come, we're getting very close to the meal, and so we wash our hands as we did before, but this time, because we're going to have a full meal, we wash and we say a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. We now come to, in a sense, the motzi. Over this time, it's not over challah, but over matzah. 2 blessings. And the first one is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam motzi lechem min haaretz. After all, matzah is a form of bread, same blessing. But we add a second blessing because it's a special kind of bread. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. God commanded us to eat the matzah, and we all do that now. We then take some of the matzah and we mix the matzah with the charosed. We take the horseradish. We mix it with some of the charoset. We put it on the matzah, and we say the blessing for the moror. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat moror.
Amen.
It's not the full bitter. It's mixed. It's broken a little bit. It's cut with the sweetness of charoset, which is apples and nuts and cinnamon. Some say charoset also reminds us of the bricks and mortar that the Israelites were forced to use to build with in Egypt. The final step before the full meal is called korech. It's making a sandwich. We put some of the horseradish between matzah and we eat that. Why do we do this? Because in the Torah it says on Passover you shall eat matzah and moror. And some of the rabbis took this literally, matzah and moror together, not just matzah and then later moror. So to make sure we've got all bases covered, we eat the sandwich, sometimes called the Hillel sandwich, because it was Hillel, one of the great Jewish teachers, 1st century BCE, who made it his custom to do that. So after having done that, the next step becomes Shulchan Orech, as it's called in the Haggadah, the full meal. So we stop and we serve, and we'll reconvene just before dessert. So we reconvene after the meal is finished. There was a tradition that the very last taste that should be in our mouths on Passover should be of the matzah. So after real dessert, we now have what's called afikomen. Afikomen probably comes from a Greek word, epikomenos, and it was the tradition in the Greek world that after people sat down, they would go sort of like from one house to the other, enjoying different desserts and entertainment. The rabbis again copied this Greek custom, and they sort of didn't understand the word epikomenos. It became afikomen, which in Aramaic they said, hey, it sort of sounds like afikuman, that which comes after the manna, the bread, the food. And so afikomen, one way or the other, we retrieve it after it's been hidden, and we pass it around, and that's the last thing that's eaten. After we have a meal, it's traditional for Jews to recite Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after the meal. Cantor Chesler leads us in the first paragraph of the grace after meals.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hazan et haolam kulo betuvo bechein bechesed uvrachamim unoten lechem lechol basar ki leolam chasto of turvo hagadol Tamir l'chasar lanu, ve'al yachsar lanu, mazon le'olam va'ed, ba'avur shema gadol, kirel zanum farnes l'hakol, umetiv l'hakol, umechin mazon, lechol beriotav asher bara, Baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol.
At a festive meal, it's the tradition that Birkat Hamazon, the prayers after eating, are concluded with a blessing over the wine. So we take the cup, and this is now the third of the fourth cup of wine.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen. Now comes a wonderful tradition. We send one of the children to open the door and to invite into the house Elijah the prophet. So in the Bible, there's a story that Elijah didn't die. He was taken up to heaven alive. and that Elijah continues to be one of God's messengers and show up whenever the Jewish people are in trouble. And Elijah, it was thought, would be the one who would bring us the news of the coming of the Messiah. And so we open the door and we're saying, just as God saved us from Egypt, so may Elijah come to bring the message that the Jewish people, even in our own day and whenever in the future, will be redeemed by God. So the door is open, and we also at that moment take another goblet. One of the beautiful traditions is that we pass it around, and that everybody pours a little bit of wine from their own cup into Elijah's cup, and it gets filled. The Elijah cup and everything that Elijah stands for only happens if we all work together. We all do whatever little we can, but together it will be enough to fill Elijah's cup. And so on Saturday night, at the bris of a baby, at Passover Seder, we always hope for Elijah the prophet to come and to bring ultimate redemption. There's a new tradition that's occurred in the last 25, 35 years, and that is Kos Miriam. Not only do we fill a cup of wine for Elijah, but many people now fill a cup filled with water for Miriam. You remember Miriam was the sister of Moses, and according to tradition, she led the women in singing at the Red Sea. And according to tradition, it was because of Miriam that the Jews had water during their years in the desert. And so if the wine of Elijah's cup represents ultimate redemption sometime in the future, the water of Miriam's cup represents the everyday needs that we need to fulfill, and especially that the women take care of, and especially on this night when women work so hard behind the scenes to create the Seder, we pay tribute to them with the cup of Miriam. You could use any cup, although if you go to a Jewish bookstore, probably order online from Amazon, you can get a special cup of Miriam. We now continue with what's called Hallel, the prayers of praise of God. We're going to sing one of them, Yivarech et Beit Yisrael. We ask God to bless the Jewish people and the house of Israel in our day, just as he did in Egypt.
Adonai zichro levarech, yevarech et Beit Yisrael, yevarech et Beit Aharon, yevarech Yirei Adonai, haktanim im hagedolim, Yosef Adonai alechem, Alechem ve'al bnechem, beruchim atem l'Adonai, oseh shamayim va'aretz, hashamayim shamayim l'Adonai, va'aretz natan livnei adam, lo hamitim ye'hallelujah, ve'lo kol yordei duma, v'anachnu nevarech ya, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam, hallelujah.
We come now to what would be formally the end of the Seder. We take the fourth cup and we recite the blessing over it.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen. So that's traditionally where the Seder ended. But you know what? Kids today are no different than kids 1,000 years ago. Kids had shpilkus. They couldn't sit still. And the parents needed to create something to keep them involved and to keep them interested. So 3 songs were added to the end of the Passover Seder. They have nothing to do with Passover. And ultimately, they are game songs, songs that kids loved and look forward to. The first one is based on letters of the alphabet. It's called Adir Hu, and what happens is we go through the alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, and we praise God, and each letter is another different praise of God. So we sing the first couple of lines of Adir Hu.
Adirhu, Yivne Veita Bekarov, Bimhera, Bimhera, V'yameinu Bekarov, El B'nei, B'nei Vecha Bekarov, Bachorhu, Gadolhu, Dagolhu, Yivne Veita Bekarov, Bimhera, Bimhera, V'yameinu Bekarov, El B'nei, B'nei Vecha Bekarov.
So that's the alphabet game song. The next song is the numbers game song. And it becomes almost like a quiz. Who can tell me what in the Jewish tradition 1 reminds you of? 2, 3, and we go 1 through 13. And of course we find all of the things that are connected to Judaism. 1 God, 2 tablets, 3 forefathers, the 4 mothers, the 5 books of Moses, the 6 sections of the Mishnah, 7 days of the week, 8 days till a bris, 9 months till childbirth, the 10 commandments, 11. This is a tough one. 11 becomes the stars in the sky in Joseph's dream. You'll remember there were 12 children, 12 sons, and the 11 stars represents Joseph's brothers who circled him and bowed down to him. 12 becomes the tribes of the Jewish people, and 13 is a tough one too. In the story in Exodus, right after the golden calf, when Moses begs God to forgive the Jewish people, God reveals his attributes, and there are 13 attributes of God. He is kind, he is patient, he is merciful, he is forgiving, etc. And that is where we end our song. We sing the first couple of numbers of Echad Miyodea.
Echad mi yodea, Echad ani yodea, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Shebashamayim uvaharetz. Shnayim mi yodea, Shnayim ani yodea, Shnei luchot habrit, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Sheba Shamayim uvaretz.
And the final song of the Haggadah is Chad Gadya. First thing you need to know is that it's not in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic. So instead of saying Gedi Echad, 1 goat, we say Chad Gadya, 1 goat in the Aramaic language, which Jews spoke 2,000 years ago. This song, again, not only does it have nothing to do with Passover, it's a little gory. We read about a little boy who has a pet goat who is mauled and eaten by a cat, who is bitten and torn apart by a dog, who's beaten by a stick, who's burned by the fire, quenched, extinguished by the water, drunk by a cow, slaughtered by the butcher, killed by the angel of death. not the kind of song we want to tell little children. But apparently, kids love this song. It's sort of an equivalent to There Was an Old Woman Who Swallowed a Fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. Perhaps she'll die. It's one of those kind of children songs that kids love, parents aren't too fond of. Kids wanted this in the Seder. But kids, it's got nothing to do with Passover. Along come the rabbis and say, aha, we can make it about Passover. So, first of all, the Father is really God. The kid is really the Jewish people. The two zuzim, right? It becomes the two tablets of the Ten Commandments. And what happens is, over the course of Jewish history, we read about one nation after another which comes and which persecutes us and tries to destroy us. There were the Egyptians, and later there were the Assyrians and the Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, then the Muslims, then the Crusaders, the Ottoman Turks. So in a sense, it's saying this has been the story of Jewish history, and what will happen at the end, just like in the song, God will come and he will put an end to all of the persecution and all of the suffering. Our Seder ends with Chad Gadya.
Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Dizabena Babitre Zuze, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Beata Shunra Ve'achal Gadya, Dizbena Babitre Zuze, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya, Beata Chalba Venashach Shunra De'achla Legadya, Dizbena Babitre Zuze, Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya.
Cantor, can you do the last verse as fast as you possibly can?
Oh my goodness, I'll try. Ve'ata kadosh baruch hu v'shachat l'malacham v'teshachat l'shochet d'shachat l'torah d'shata l'maya d'chav v'lenura d'saraf l'hutra d'hika l'chal b'nashach l'shunra d'achla l'gadya d'izbana babi trezuze Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya.
We wish you a good Yantiv, good health, and all the best in the year to come.